Hey, this is Tom, and in this video we'll be taking a look at a few ways that you can enhance the adaptations that you get from your longer duration, lower intensity workouts, which aim to strengthen the aerobic system and improve your endurance and cycling economy, i.e. the oxygen cost of work. And since the ability to sustain a given intensity for a prolonged period of time without succumbing to fatigue is such a prerequisite to successful cycling performance in a number of different disciplines, the following suggestions should hopefully help quite a lot of you get better results from this kind of training. So let's get straight into it, and the first tip is to train with restricted glycogen availability. Riding with reduced muscle glycogen, which is the body's storage form of carbohydrate, forces you to combust greater amounts of fat for energy production. This means that at a given intensity, you become less reliant on glycolysis, which is the anaerobic process of breaking down carbohydrates for energy. Since glycolysis produces lactate as a byproduct, where lactate is also a fuel for the aerobic system, reducing the contribution of anaerobic metabolism will help stimulate adaptations that will improve your lactate threshold, doing so by reducing overall lactate production. A restricted glycogen availability state can be achieved via a number of different methods. These include performing lower intensity training after an overnight fast, or by training twice per day, where the expended carbohydrate from the first session isn't or is only partially replaced for the second. There's no need to go overboard with this training strategy or tactic, where 1 to 2 sessions per week will generally give good results. Moving on, and the next suggestion is to try and avoid extended periods of time above your lactate threshold. Since one of the goals of endurance training is to help improve the ability to produce energy aerobically by encouraging the burning of fat, as we've just talked about, you want to avoid creating an abundance of lactate in the muscles and in the blood, since the body will use this lactate as a fuel in preference of fat when the former is more readily available. Now, one short, hard effort here and there isn't going to derail the entire workout. However, doing lots of these kinds of efforts throughout the ride can result in not much fat being combusted at all, meaning the mitochondrial adaptations that you're trying to stimulate might not come to fruition as you might have hoped. Try to keep the main purpose of the workout in mind at all times to avoid going too hard too often. Thirdly, make sure you prioritize duration with this kind of training. In a similar vein to what was just discussed before, keeping the intensity lower will mean a reduced risk of you having to curtail the session due to premature fatigue. Since the raw amount of muscle contractions that are performed in these types of workouts play a key role in the signaling for adaptation, having to shorten the ride because the intensity was too high will again reduce the adaptive response that you're seeking from your endurance training. Unlike classic interval training, where the goals might be to improve lactate clearance or cardiac output, adaptations in aerobic endurance workouts happen as a function of time and not intensity. So try not to worry too much if you're riding easier than you're used to when aerobic adaptations are the goal. You want more muscle contractions rather than stronger contractions, but fewer. The final main suggestion that we'll cover in this video will be to add low cadence blocks to your endurance workouts. Once you become accustomed to riding for longer durations at a low intensity, training the slow twitch muscle fibers to be more damage and fatigue resistant is one of the next steps you can take to get more from your endurance training. By riding for sustained periods at a low cadence of between 50 and 70 RPM, whilst keeping the intensity below the lactate threshold, you can place a greater strain and a more isolated stress on these particular slow twitch muscle fibers. The net result is that these aerobically efficient fibers can work for longer at a given intensity whilst resisting fatigue, which subsequently delays the recruitment of less efficient fast twitch fibers to maintain the workload. So before wrapping up, here are a few additional pointers that you might want to keep in mind. Firstly, feel free to stop and take a break during these types of rides, since this will help you to stay out longer, which goes back to prioritizing duration over intensity. Next, pay close attention to heart rate decoupling. In your post-ride analysis, or even better if you can see this happening during the training, try to identify the point at which your heart rate begins to slide away from a steady power output, or vice versa. This can help you to gauge when you've done enough training to stimulate the desired adaptations, and give you some insights into what the appropriate duration is for these types of rides for you currently. When you're performing this type of analysis, just try to make sure that any drift that you are seeing isn't coming from some other influencing factor such as dehydration. Finally, it can be really useful to not think of this term aerobic base as being exclusive to one phase of a training plan. This isn't something that should be exclusively done in the winter or early stages of the preparation, and instead should be a staple in every part of the training cycle, where your aerobic system wants to be worked on continuously, and by doing so you should see long-term improvements in this area. So hopefully this video has given you a few practical suggestions that you can put into your own aerobic endurance sessions. Please drop any questions in the comments section below the video, and we've also left a few links to some related resources in the description. Otherwise, thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and we'll catch you on another one soon.